Hello there. Today I'm showing an expert advisor that combines fractals and two moving averages. So on the screen I've shown two moving averages. I have the slow moving average marked and the fast moving average. And because at this stage the fast moving average is above the slow moving average, I'm only going to be in a buying mode. And the fractals are these chevrons that will appear above or below the lines. The fractals is an inbuilt indicator in MetaTrader 4 and 5. A fractal only forms when that is the highest point for 2 bars to the left and 2 bars to the right, or the lowest point for 2 bars to the left and 2 bars to the right. You may find at the very edge of your chart where your bars are just forming that a fractal will appear as soon as a bar closes, but that fractal can be redrawn if one of the next 2 bars exceeds that high or low. So I'm only going to be looking at the bars when the 2 bars after the fractal have closed and I know that that fractal is not going to be redrawn. So what I'm looking for then, as I've marked here, this is a fractal, this is an upward fractal, so it's marked above the bar. And I have the fast moving average above the slow moving average, so I'm in a buying mode. So buying mode and the fractal above the bar means that this is a trigger bar for a buy order. Once I have that trigger bar, I set the buy stop at the top of the trigger bar, the highest price, and knowing that I'm doing this at the beginning of a bar, so I'm doing it at the beginning of this 3rd bar afterwards, so that should be below this point. And I'm setting the stop loss at the bottom of that trigger bar. And then I'm setting my take profit simply as a multiple of the stop loss, so I'm using by default in this example 1.5 times. So I have the take profit here, and you can see that in this case the price rose, took out the buy stop, so I placed a buy order at that point, or a buy trade, and then reach the take profit here. So that's the basics of this strategy. 2 moving averages, buying mode if the fast is above the slow, and selling mode if the fast is below the slow. And then when a fractal has formed, and allowing for 2 bars after that, I place a buy stop if it's an upward fractal in a buying mode, and I will place a sell stop if it's a downward fractal in a selling mode. And the sell is just the opposite of this setup. So let's go to the code. This does use the Orchard framework, and I've upgraded the framework to version 3.04. Not a lot of changes between 3.03 and 3.04, but I had to add in the indicator classes for moving average and for fractals, which I didn't already have, and some functions to allow MetaTrader 4 to use the trade class to place orders rather than just positions. Now, I'm not going to go through a lot of detail in the changes to the framework. I will explain quickly how I created the moving average indicator, just to show you how you can do that based on an existing indicator class, and a quick explanation of what the additional functions do. But I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on the framework itself. So let's get into this, and first I'll explain the framework, and then I'll show how I use that framework to create the expert advisor. So to start, I'll just show how I created the new indicator wrappers. I've got the navigator open on the left here, and I already had the stochastic and the HA indicators. What I've added in this version is the indicator MA moving average and the indicator fractal. I won't show both of those, but the common thing with the MA and the fractal, these are both wrappers for internal indicator functions. So there's an IMA function and an iFractals function. So to create these, I simply started with the indicator stochastic and made a few changes. So I'm just going to do that now again and show you how easy it is to create one of these indicator wrappers. So this is the indicator stochastic open here, and this is the indicator MA. But what I'm going to do is delete everything in the indicator MA, copy everything from indicator stochastic, and then I will make the changes in here to turn this into the indicator MA. Now here at the beginning of the code, the first thing I'm going to do, of course, is change this C indicator stochastic to C indicator MA. And I'll do that all through the code. Next, these member variables are applicable for the stochastic, but they're not the right variables for a moving average, so I'll just delete those. And then I've inserted the member variables that are applicable for a moving average, so the period, the method, and the applied price. This init function will change because it's obviously got different variables being passed in. So now I've replaced the init variables with the period, method, and applied price for the moving average. The constructors are going to change and they'll have the same arguments that the init has. So I'll just copy that. And copy into this as well. So these two constructors, one has the symbol and the time frame and the other doesn't. Other than that, they are the same, and that's why I have the init method, because each of these constructors then calls the init with these values. So I have one common piece of code. And now, because I've changed the arguments to the constructor down here in the constructor functions, I just make the same changes by pasting those same variable arguments again and there. Now these arguments obviously are changing as well. I can't just paste into those because I've got the type definitions. I'll just change these to period, method, and applied price, and I'll copy that as well and paste that in here. Now the init function itself obviously changes. I need to get these variables again. Copy those, paste there. These were the variables for the stochastic. I'll just delete that and add in the variables for the moving average. Now here where I'm setting up the handle, I don't want to call I stochastic, I want to call I moving average. Simply replacing the iStochastic function with the EMA function. And then in this MQL4 function, because MQL4, you remember, returns its values differently from the functions, where I have defined iStochastic here, I also want to replace that with a call to EMA. I changed this as well. Here I'm actually capturing the value from the EMA and then returning it. You could easily have left this as just return EMA. And that's it. That's all it takes to take one of these indicator wrappers and convert to another, and that will be fine. I can just compile that, do a syntax check, that's it, and that's the indicator EMA. I won't show you the same thing for Fractal, it's exactly the same, just different arguments again. Now the other change to remember, if you do add more indicators, I've changed this indicators.mqh file, which simply has a list of the indicators, and I've just added the two, the Fractal and the EMA, in here. And the other changes that I won't go into any detail on, here in the trade underscore MQL4, I've added this order open function because there is already an order open function in the MQL5 trade object. So I needed to add that to MQL4 because in this particular expert advisor, I'm going to be using orders, where in previous expert advisors, I haven't needed the orders. So I've created that order open. And then I've also created in both MetaTrader 4 and 5 in the trade custom class, this order delete that takes arguments of the symbol and the order type. So that lets me delete all of the orders for that symbol and type in one call. And it does match the magic number that's already inside the trade object. So I'm actually looking for all orders of that symbol, type, and matching magic number, and it will just delete all of those orders. So those are the primary changes in the framework. Any other changes are simply refactoring, or if you prefer, just tidying things up a little. So now let's get straight to the expert advisor and see how that's written. So now looking at the expert, I go through this structure every time I create one of these experts, but I'll just do it again quickly. In my experts orchard, I've created a separate folder for this expert, Fractal EMA. In there, I've created a file, Fractal EMA MQ4. That's the one you can see on screen here at the moment. The same .mq5 and .mqh. I do this because, as you can see with the MQ4, it has nothing but some property and include statements. And one of those include statements is this include fractal EMA.mqh. That's this file here. I do that because I can then have one set of code, which is all inside this fractal EMA.mqh, that works for both MetaTrader 4 and 5. If I look at the MQ5 quickly, it's the same. It has include fractal EMA.mqh and then property statements. And the property statements follow this include because these macros are actually defined in that include file, and that way I can pick up these values for both MetaTrader 4 and 5, and they're common across both platforms. I have seen others use a technique where the MQ4 file includes the MQ5 rather than a separate MQH, but that does create a bit of a problem then with the property and the copyright statements. So I prefer to do it this way, where I have a completely separate .mqh file. And then here the MQH file includes all of the necessary code for the expert. That and the expert file include this framework.mqh file, and the only purpose of this framework, to change that comment, is to include the appropriate version of the Orchard framework. So here I'm including Orchard Frameworks, Framework 3.04, so that's including that version. And that way all of the files inside this expert get the same version of the framework. And then most of the logic for this particular expert is included in the expert.mqh. So we'll get to these now in order. So looking at the fractal EMA.mqh file, this is what you would normally see if you were simply writing an expert advisor for MetaTrader 4 or 5. You would typically put everything in that one file. I've structured it as I have so that I can compile this for both MetaTrader 4 or 5. Here are the standard define statements: the copyright link, version description, comment, and a magic number. I define those all here. And then I include framework.mqh, which I said is simply to make sure that all of the files in this expert advisor get the same framework version. The inputs that I have a fast moving average period and a slow moving average period. I haven't included the method and the applied price because I'm going to be defaulting those to EMA and closing price for both of these. So I just need to capture a period for the fast and slow. And then a take profit stop loss ratio 1.5. So when I create the trades here, the take profit will be 1.5 times the stop loss. And then default inputs I have in this standard file because they are so common across all of my experts. I've put them in one place under Orchard Shared Default Inputs. I'll open that quickly so that you can see it. It is nothing more than an input of volume, a comment, and a magic number, and it gets the comment from this app comment macro that I've defined and the app magic that I've defined. So if we go back to the EMA, so that takes care of all of the inputs. The only three that are really necessary for this expert to do its calculations are the moving average periods and the take profit stop loss ratio, because the fractals have no inputs. And then, as I say here, the expert does all of the work. So I've included expert.mqh. I won't go to that right now. I just want to finish showing you what the fractal EMA does. I've included expert.mqh, and that means that I have access to a class called CExpert. So I'm now declaring a variable of type CExpert. I'm just calling that expert. It's a pointer, this asterisk. In the onInit function then of the fractal EMA, I'm creating a new instance of that expert object. So expert equals new CExpert, and the arguments to that, it actually takes a fast moving average indicator object, type C indicator MA, it takes a slow moving average object, and the fractal object, and then the take profit stop loss ratio, the volume, comment, and magic number. So rather than create variables to hold these indicator classes or indicator objects, I'm simply using the new statement inside the arguments to the CExpert. So I'm passing in a new instance of C indicator moving average for the fast moving average period, and as I said, I'm defaulting the mode to exponential and the price to close. The same with a new instance of C indicator MA for the slow moving average period, and a new instance of indicator fractal, and the fractals have no arguments. That does mean, because I'm creating these objects here and I'm not actually creating variables to hold them, I need to take care of deleting those somewhere, and you'll see that in the expert I take care of deleting all of these objects that are passed in. Now this is an alternative to simply passing in all of these values to the expert. And I prefer this because it's a little more flexible inside the expert, and it means I capture all of those variables here and handle them, and the expert doesn't actually need to know anything about the inputs that I'm providing. I just pass in these three indicator objects. And then after creating the expert, it will return a value from expert.onInit, which is the initialization result that needs to be returned for this onInit function. On dinit then, all I need to do is delete expert, and that will take care of deleting these three objects that were created. And on tick, I simply call expert.onTick. And that's the main body then of my expert advisor. And as I say, here all of the work happens inside the expert. So let's open that expert.mqh file and see how that works. First statement here, include framework.mqh. Same as before, this is so that I get a single version of the framework included on all files. Class CExpert, which inherits from CExpert base, and that is defined inside the framework, the CExpert base. Some definitions for compatibility. The fractal function has two buffers, an upper and a lower value, and for MetaTrader 5, those are addressed by upper line and lower line, but those two macro variables don't exist in MetaTrader 4. The MetaTrader 4 equivalents are mode upper and mode lower. So that I can write my code once and have it work for both MetaTrader 4 and 5, I have this ifdef MQL4, and I define upper line as mode upper and lower line as mode lower. That way when I compile this in MetaTrader 4, I can use upper line and lower line in the code, and they will simply be substituted with mode upper and mode lower. Here are the three indicator classes that I need, or objects of indicator class: the CIndicator EMA for the fast and the slow moving average, and CIndicator fractal for the M fractal, and these are all pointers. And then the take profit stop loss ratio, which is just a double. So these variables are just to hold the arguments that are being passed in. Loop is the standard function name that I use. The onTick from, let me go back, CExpert base actually has an onTick function, which is the one that's being called from this fractal. The onTick takes care of a little bit of housekeeping and standard things such as checking for a new bar, but then ultimately it calls a loop function, which I've defined here inside CExpert. So this is where I put the custom logic for each onTick loop. And I've also added this make order function to the expert, which is going to be used to actually place the buy stop and sell stop orders. Now, the constructor for CExpert, two moving average objects, fast MA and slow MA, and the fractal object, CIndicator fractal, and then the take profit stop loss ratio, and the three default values, or the three standard values, volume, trade comment, and magic number. And then here in the body of the constructor, same arguments, and I'm calling CExpert base with the volume, trade comment, and magic, because the base class inside the framework can handle those three values. And then I'm just capturing the fast and the slow moving average and the fractal into the member variables declared above, and the same for the take profit stop loss ratio. And finally, minit result equals init succeeded, and that will be the result value that comes back in the expert.init result. The destructor, as I mentioned, I'm deleting the fast, the slow, and the fractal because they are not deleted in the main body of the application. So this expert, when that's destroyed, will destroy these three objects as well. And now in the loop, I'm only trading on a new bar because I'm looking to place buy stop and sell stop on the break of a fractal value. So if not M new bar, and M new bar is also a variable that is set in the expert base, which is part of the framework. So if this is not a new bar, then I'll just return. I then want the fast and the slow values from bar number 1, the bar that's just closed. And that's just calling the object mfastma.getData, buffer number 0, moving averages only have the one buffer, number 0, and bar number 1. And then I do the same for the slow. So with that, I have the values for the fast and the slow moving average for bar number 1. And by comparing those two, I'll know if the fast is above the slow, then I'm in buying mode, and if the fast is below the slow, then I'm in a selling mode. Then the fractal is a little different. So a fractal is defined as the high value or the low value where the two bars to either side are lower than the high or higher than the low. That means that you don't truly have a fractal until you have at least two bars completed after the fractal occurs. Now, if you watch these drawn on a chart, you'll sometimes see the fractal appear before there are two more complete bars. But if the high price or the low price for that fractal is broken by those next two bars, then the fractal gets redrawn and removed. So you can't really be certain the fractal exists until you have two more complete bars after that fractal. And that's why I'm looking at bar number 3. So remember, I'm doing this just after the bars have closed. So bars 1 and 2 are the two bars that came after the fractal, and then bar 3 will be the bar where the fractal exists. So I'm getting the high and the low values with fractal high and fractal low, again with mfractal.getData, and I'm passing upper line and lower line, and I'm looking at bar number 3 for the most recent possible fractal. With those values, then I want to test it. If the fast is greater than the slow, I'm in an uptrend, and if fractal high is not equal to empty value, that means I do have a high fractal in bar number 3. In that case, I need to create my orders for a buy stop, and I do that with the make order function. Order type buy stop. That buy stop is going to be placed at the fractal high value, and the stop loss is going to be at the low of that bar that had the fractal, so at the low of bar number 3, and I'm just getting I low symbol time frame bar number 3. So the entry point will be at the high price of that fractal bar, and the stop loss will be at the low point of that fractal bar. And that simply places an order, and that order will be good till cancelled. And the only way that order will get cancelled is either that it is executed and turns into a trade, or I get another indicator for a high fractal which causes me to delete that. But you'll see how that works in a moment when we get to the make order function. Then there's this else if. Fast is less than slow, and in that case I'm in a downtrend, and so I'm looking for a low fractal. And if fractal low is not equal to empty value, then I do the same thing, make order, but in this case it's a sell stop at the fractal low, and the stop loss is the high of symbol time frame bar number 3. Now the make order function, very simple. It's being passed the type, which is a buy or sell stop, the entry price and the stop loss price. First I want to delete any orders of that type, because I have now a new entry point. If there is an order out there that hasn't been executed, I just want to get rid of that order. So trade.orderDelete, that's the new function in the framework, passing in the symbol and the type. And that trade will already have the magic number that gets assigned also inside the framework. Let me scroll back up a little. Here in the constructor, when I call cExpertBase and I pass volume, trade comment and magic number, the expert base already has this magic number stored, and so it will, in calling this order delete, will delete all buy stop, so for this type, buy stop orders or sell stop for the symbol and the magic number for this expert. Next I'm just calculating the take profit. So take profit equals the entry price plus the entry price minus the stop loss multiplied by that take profit stop loss ratio. Now this function is actually the same whether I'm buying or selling. If I'm buying, then price is higher than stop loss, so this price minus SL is a positive number. So price plus a positive number gives me a higher price for the take profit. If I'm selling, then the stop loss is higher than price, so price minus stop loss actually gives me a negative number, and then I'm actually doing price minus that stop loss distance, but both cases multiplied by the ratio. And then I call trade.orderOpen. That's an existing function in MetaTrader 5, and I've duplicated that in the MetaTrader 4 trade class. Pass the symbol, the type, the order size, which I'm just using a default fixed order size from the inputs. This next argument is a limit price. I'm not using that, so I'm setting it to 0. Price, that's the entry price for the order. Stop loss, take profit prices. Order time GTC, this order is good till cancelled. An expiry time I don't have because I'm not expiring it, and then the trade comment. So that places the order, and then I simply have to wait for that order to be executed, or if I get another matching fractal, a high or a low, then I'll delete any remaining orders and wait for them to run. So this expert advisor simply places trades or places orders with a take profit and a stop loss number, and then waits for them to be executed and close normally. Or if I get another indicator of the same direction, then it will delete any pending orders that are already out there and create new ones. And that is it for the Fractal EMA Expert Advisor. In practice, I found in backtesting, I found that this actually performed better if I reverse the direction. So in other words, if I have a high fractal, uptrend high fractal, I found that I was better to place a sell limit rather than a buy stop. And the same then for the opposite side, I was better to place a buy limit and trade for reversion. But those results could easily be changed by using a different currency, a different time frame, a different number of periods for fast and slow moving average. It's just that my default test, which was on Euro USD, with the default values here 10 and 20 for the slow and the fast, 10 and 20 for the fast and the slow moving average on a 1 hour time frame. I found that a reversion strategy actually worked a little better, but I'm not going to show how to do that here. It would make this too complicated. If you want to see this same expert advisor with a reversion strategy, then leave a comment and I'll make a short second video to follow that up. This code is available for download. See the description for the links to GitHub for that. I hope you found it useful. If you have, please click the like button. That helps us a lot. And if you want to see more of our videos, click subscribe and then click the bell icon to be notified when we release the next video. Thank you for watching.